Hi, everyone. I am your host, Stephanie Chandler. I can't believe Friday is here already. This always goes by so quickly. This session today is with me, Stephanie Chandler. I'm going to be covering revenue streams to grow your publishing business. Before we begin, here are some quick guidelines for you. This event is being recorded. We do have the phone line muted. If you'd like to ask a question, I would love to take your questions. Please dial *2 on your phone at any time. That will show me your hand is raised, and I will take questions at the end of this session. This session will last 50 minutes. There are 2 handouts available for this session, so hop on over to nonfictionwritersconference.com to download the handouts. And if you're a Twitter user, love to see you over there using hashtag NFWC. This is the point where I normally introduce our speakers, so I am going to transition and introduce myself. So once again, welcome to the conference. I am just thrilled to be here, and this morning I was kind of making a timeline of my kind of career in publishing, and it was kind of interesting. So I thought I would start by sharing that with you. For those of you who maybe haven't met me before, aren't familiar with me, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a quick background. Back in 2003, I quit my Silicon Valley job, and I opened a 2,800 square foot brick and mortar bookstore in Sacramento, and quickly discovered that running a bookstore is not as romantic as it sounds. But I learned a lot from that experience. I thought I was going to sit in the back office and write novels. I discovered that I lacked imagination to write novels, and then I kind of accidentally learned that nonfiction was just my calling. I love it. I wrote my first book. It was a business startup guide. So in 2005, I launched a website called Business Info Guide with the goal of attracting my target audience at that time, which were entrepreneurs and people who wanted to start a business. And I self-published that first book that same year in 2005, and it did well. And the following year, I wrote my second book, and I was able to get a book deal with Wiley. That book, by the way, was From Entrepreneur to Infopreneur, and it was a book about how to make money with digital products online, which is kind of the foundation of this presentation. And that book really was a game changer for my career. It brought me a lot of consulting opportunities and speaking opportunities and sponsorships, so I'll talk about that in a little bit. And a year later, I signed with a literary agent who, by the way, I had met 2 years prior at a writers' conference. So that question came up of, does it make sense to meet literary agents at writers' conferences? It does. And, you know, I made a point of keeping in touch with her. She didn't want to talk to me 2 years prior when I didn't have an audience, but by the time I had an audience, a high-traffic website, a mailing list, she was happy to sign me. We sold 2 more books to traditional publishers. In the meantime, I sold the bookstore in 2007, which was right before the book market kind of crashed and ebooks exploded. And I had so many people coming to me saying, you know, I want to publish a book. How do I do it well? And that inspired me. In 2008, I launched Authority Publishing, and we began helping to publish nonfiction books. And in the meantime, I was still under contract with traditional publishers, and I got really turned off by traditional publishing. I didn't like the lack of control, the lack of me doing all the work and them reaping all the benefits. So I ultimately fired my agent in the nicest way possible. We remain friends today, and I took back control. So 9 books later, it's been a great ride, and I began speaking at a lot of writers' conferences, and I got really kind of discouraged that at these conferences, us nonfiction writers were kind of left out. We were kind of shoved to the back. It was mostly about fiction and the craft of fiction and a little bit of children's books, and sometimes memoir got a little bit of love, but for the most part, nonfiction was really largely ignored at writers' conferences and at writers' events and writers' groups. So in 2010, I launched the first nonfiction writers' conference online, just like what we're doing now, and I had no idea if anybody would come to it, but they did. And it was just a spectacularly fun learning process. And so since then, we've hosted the conference. Each year after that, the attendees would say to me, I wish we had a way to keep in touch after the conference was over. And so that planted a seed in what ultimately became in 2013, 4 years ago this month, we launched the Nonfiction Authors Association. And it really all comes back to my passion for working with nonfiction authors. And what really drives my passion there is that I love that you're all on a mission to make some sort of difference in the world. That really matters to me. It's meaningful to me. And so that kind of drives everything that I do with the association and the conference. And I hope that that comes across and that you understand that that's something that I truly value and appreciate. So what I want to talk about are some ways that you can actually earn money from your book and from using your book to generate income. And again, if you're logging on late, there are 2 handouts available over at nonfictionwritersconference.com. There's a slide deck. I'm not going to follow it exactly, but it'll give you a little bit of a foundation. You do not need it to follow along. So first of all, I want to talk about the word influencer. It is a hot industry buzzword right now. And basically what it means to be an influencer is that it means that you have an audience. And when you have an audience, when you have your tribe, you have influence over your tribe. So, for example, when a blogger recommends new software, for example, that she likes, her audience takes that as great advice, and they in turn go and buy that software. So therefore, that blogger has influence. And this is the goal as authors. We want to build our tribes so that we have influence, because people with influence, people buy from us. They buy from people with influence. They buy books, they buy products and services, and also the companies want to work with influencers. So that's a big term in corporate America. Companies are looking to work with influencers in order to reach their audiences. And I'm going to talk about corporate sponsorships toward the end of this discussion. To me, it's kind of the ultimate way to earn money as an author. So, we want to start with, what is your plan with your book? And I want you to kind of think beyond your books. The reality is you should not get into publishing if you're trying to make money, because the truth is very few authors earn a living from their books. In fact, there was a survey done a couple of years ago, and it showed that more than half of the independently published authors earned less than $500 a year. And that's pretty sad. And it's reality. It's my experience that that is the reality. And it all comes down to marketing and building that audience. The good news of that is that more than half half also earn more than $500. So there's hope. But I would never encourage somebody to publish a book in search of riches. There's a lot of work involved in hitting a bestsellers list. And there's also, I think, a little bit of luck involved in some of that. But the reality is, like in my space in writing business books, you're doing pretty well if you sell 5,000 to 10,000 books in a 3-year period. That is what the traditional publishers are aiming for, 10,000 books in a 3-year period. They consider that a success. So think about that. That's not a huge amount of money because book royalties are so thin, the profit margin is so thin even when you're self-published. So the goal here is to figure out how to use your book to earn other types of income. And the first option, to me is kind of the most obvious, is consulting or coaching, which is basically helping others do whatever it is that you do. And consulting and coaching are a little bit different, by the way. Consulting is really where you're giving your expertise to a client, and coaching is more about helping that client pull their own greatness out of themselves. If you think about a coach working with an athlete. So, they both kind of overlap a little bit, but whether you call yourself a consultant or a coach is a very personal decision for some people. But here's the thing about consulting and coaching. You can go through certification programs if you want to, but you can also just decide that this is what you want to do, and you hang a shingle and you become a consultant or a coach. I honestly never set out to become a consultant. but people started coming to me, and this can happen to you when you have a book and you start to build an audience. People are going to seek you out, and they're going to ask about your services. And so, I think you can find that it's a lot of fun. You can kind of hang a shingle. And I want to speak to those of you who are memoir writers because, by the way, you have this same opportunity. In the slide deck I shared, there's an author, Cami Ostman. I don't know her personally, but she wrote a book called Second Wind, Learning to Shine at Midlife. It's about her journey to begin running marathons. And she decided to also become a coach, helping people enjoy midlife and live it to its greatest potential. So memoir writers look at your topic and figure out what it is that you can help people do that kind of ties in nicely with your book. I wanted to mention a couple of great resources. These are consulting directories where you can get a free listing to promote your services. One is clarity.fm. It's www.clarity.fm. And that is a directory where you can list yourself as a consultant, put in an hourly rate, and people will seek you out there for consulting services. I have met several clients as a result of being on Clarity. Another newer service is called GenieCast, GenieCast, geniecast.com. Also a free consulting directory where you can consult with people by video. These companies take a small percentage of your hourly rate, but they are a great way to kind of hang your shingle and get started. Next in our list of revenue streams, I want to talk about certification programs. This is an interesting case study for you. I know an author named Jim Horan. He wrote a book called The One-Page Business Plan. It's a really brilliant book. He was a consultant who was going out meeting with clients and showing them how to build a one-page plan, which basically put their business goals into one page. And people were coming to him and saying, I want to teach your process. And he thought, well, I can teach people how to teach my process. So he created a certification program for the one-page business plan. And a couple of times a month, he has an online training where he certifies other consultants to teach the one-page business plan program. I'm not sure what he's charging these days, but I think it's a couple $1,000s to get certified. And, they take a quiz, they get certified on his process, and then these consultants are out in the world teaching his process, promoting his brand, and selling his books. It is brilliant. He is a heck of a nice guy, and it's something to think about if you have a process that you can teach other people to deliver. Next up are information products. I love digital products. I have been creating and selling them for many, many years. A friend of mine named Carl Polachuk is a consultant to IT consultants, and as he says it, he teaches nerds how to grow their businesses. And what Carl has done is he has carved out a really powerful tribe in a niche, the IT consultant niche. It's a tiny little niche, and I love niches because you really have an opportunity to stand out. If you decide you want to be a business consultant, for example, and you hang your shingle as small business consultant, there's not a lot to distinguish you from every other small business consultant. But if you choose a niche like IT consultants or working with startup companies or working with .com companies, then you have a better chance of standing out and really connecting with your audience. And that is what Carl Polachuk has done with his SMB Books website. He sells, not only does he write technology business running books, but he also produces digital reports. He records every presentation he's ever given, live or online, and sells the recordings. And he sells thousands and thousands of dollars a month strictly in digital products. It is a fantastic goal to set for yourself. I will say that it's gotten a little bit harder to sell digital products over the years because There's so much free information available online. So what you want to do is create products that can't be found elsewhere. And also this is where kind of elevating your expertise and building an audience is so important, because if people are in your tribe and they believe in you and what you have to say, they'll be willing to pay for your information products. A great example of this comes from Joan Stewart. She was one of our pros in our Ask a Pro sessions this year. Joan is known as the publicity hound. She's a former newspaper editor. She teaches people how to get publicity, and she's brilliant with her publicity advice. And for years, she has sold special reports off her website, and these are reports on how to pitch the media and things like that. They sell for, $10 or $15, and some of the reports are as few as 2 or 3 pages. Some are 10 to 15 pages. But people are willing to drop $10 or $15 or $20 on these reports because they know and trust that Joan gives great information and advice. And so that's really the key. It's that building that foundation with your audience so that they believe in you and they will follow you. So digital products, another digital product I really love are databases. So if you're keeping track of information that your audience would be interested in, that might be something you want to sell. And thinking back to, 2005, 2006, when I had started that business website, I was keeping track of websites that accepted article submissions. And over time, I realized I had grown that list to over 100 websites. And I had shared it with a few friends, and it occurred to me, I bet people might want to buy this list. And I listed it for sale, and sure enough, it sold like crazy. So to this day, I still do that. I sell lists of blogs that accept guest posts. I sell lists of podcasts that need guests. So think about the data that you are keeping and what you could, in turn, sell to your audience. This includes templates, checklists, worksheets. All of these things, teaching others to do what you do, can really be powerful revenue-generating opportunities for you. I also really love niche books and ebooks. Now, these can be short books. And by the way, your book can be as long as you want it to be or short as you want it to be. And this is a great debate in the publishing world, but lots of authors, including Seth Godin, our keynote speaker, have authored very short books as well as very long books. So, 25,000 words can be a great short book, and niche topics sell books. I met a woman at a writers' conference a few years back who writes cookbooks for diabetics, and she's earning a solid 6-figure income from niche books, from diabetic cookbooks. I mean, how fascinating is that? So, when you're thinking about your target audience with your book goals and your product goals, the more you can narrow that focus down, the better your chances of connecting with an audience. I also really love workbooks. For whatever reason, workbooks have this high perceived value, and there's not a lot of competition in most categories. For whatever reason, we're willing to pay a little bit more for a workbook, even though it's got less text than maybe its, companion trade paperback. So you'll pay maybe $20 for the paperback and then $30 for the workbook because it allows you to fill in the blanks and maybe think in a different way. So I've always been a fan of workbooks. That's something to consider putting together as a companion to your book. You can sell a physical workbook. You can sell a downloadable workbook. You can bundle them together and increase the, purchase that you're selling at the back of the room, maybe if you're speaking. Another great opportunity is a paid newsletter. Now, Barbara Winter, who was also a speaker for us a number of years back, she publishes a physical print newsletter that gets mailed out to her subscribers every month called Joyfully Jobless. It's about how to make a living without a job, which happens to be the title of her book. She's authored one book and has earned her living around that book for, I believe, around 20 years. And So she produces info products, online courses, things like that. But what fascinates me is this paid newsletter that she has. It's brilliantly written, and people pay. It's a relatively reasonable subscription fee. I don't know if it's $20 or $30 a month or a year, to get this monthly printed newsletter. And what a treat to receive something, tangible in a world where digital is just, dominating everything we do. So something to think about for your specific industry. You can also earn revenue from teleseminars and webinars. These are also commonly used as free opportunities to kind of build your mailing list, but there are some examples of companies that are producing teleseminars and webinars as revenue streams. One great example comes from SpeakerNetNews.com. By the way, if you're interested in professional speaking, SpeakerNet News produces a really great weekly newsletter with tips on the speaking industry. And they also host teleseminars and webinars, and they charge pretty reasonable rates for the recordings. They're like $20 to $30 per event. And it's a really interesting revenue stream built around an enjoyable, valuable, free newsletter. Website named Marketing Professionals, marketingprofs.com. They offer online and in-person webinars and events and training programs. So online training is really hot right now. There's a lot of opportunities to produce courses for your target audience. You can use or teach through a platform like lynda.com or Udemy. These are good if you don't already have an audience, but if you do have an audience or you're building your audience, you might consider hosting your own training courses and doing them yourself. There's all kinds of different platforms to host training courses on. Kajabi is one, Kajabi, Kajabi. There's Teachable, Teachable, and a number of other training platforms to consider. You also don't even necessarily have to use one of those training platforms. I produce a lot of online courses, and we host them directly on our website. We upload videos through a Vimeo account, and we host our videos there and create password-protected pages for our training programs. So there's lots of ways to do this. If you enjoy teaching, which I know many of us do, this can be a really fun revenue stream that allows you to kind of use some of your gifts with your audience. Another option is to host an online conference like the one you're attending right now. Back in 2010 when I launched this conference, I don't think there were many others. I honestly couldn't even tell you where I got the idea, if it just kind of came out of the sky. I don't remember. But since then, other industries have followed and launched some online conferences. One that I find pretty interesting is Social Media Examiner. They have an online conference each year, and the rate to attend that is like around $700 for their multi-day conference, which I think they usually spread out over a couple of weeks. It's not as time condensed as our conferences. Theirs is a little bit more spread out. But at $700 a ticket, they are marketing to a corporate audience. So think about this for your audience. Can you reach a corporate audience? So what they're doing is going to corporate marketing departments. Companies are happy to pay $700 for employee training. And therefore, they're getting like thousands of people to attend these conferences at $500 to $700 a pop with discounts. Now, you do the math. This conference is generating, $1 million a year. So I find that really fascinating. I can tell you that the Nonfiction Writers Conference does not generate $1 million a year, but we're also not targeting a corporate audience. But I think it's a brilliant example and another opportunity for you to look into for revenue streams. I also really love membership programs, and you can find all kinds of different membership programs online, which usually come back to teaching people how to do whatever it is that you do. I stumbled across a site called herbmentor.com, herb, H-E-R-B, and this is a website teaching people how to grow and cultivate herbs. It's got a really low member rate. It's like $9 a month or something, and it's for herb gardeners. There's another website called Tech Pro, and it's got a much higher rate per year. It's like several $100s per year, but they're, again, targeting a corporate audience. So an employee can go to their company and say, will you spend $500 a year for me to get access to this educational material? And it's a slam dunk and a huge revenue generator. So another option to consider. I have to share with you this example that I absolutely love of a subscription program. Now, this is not an author. This is a physical product, but it's a great example and might maybe plant an idea for you. So there's a company out in, I believe it's in Oklahoma. It's actually a little retail store. It's a yarn and knitting store called Loops. And so the woman who owns this store was having trouble because apparently knitting is a seasonal business. I had no idea. But during her downtime, she's trying to figure out how does she keep her revenues up in her yarn store. So she decides that she's going to create a subscription program, and she put together a pattern, a knitting pattern, and the associated yarn that goes with that pattern, and started selling this monthly Loops Club subscription. And this thing took off to the point where she's earning 6 figures a month off knitting kits. I mean, it's just incredible to me. So subscription-based, what can you do to offer your audience? I know we've got a lot of holistic authors. You know, is there a product or even a digital product that you could deliver on a monthly basis to earn revenue? Communities are another really fascinating way to earn income. And I've got 2 examples I want to share with you. The first one is a site called backyardchickens.com. That's right, Backyard Chickens. It's a website all about how you can raise chickens in your backyard. It's actually run by a friend of mine named Rob Ledlow. And how many site visitors do you think backyardchickens.com would generate in a month? Do you think it would be maybe 10,000, 20,000? That sounds like a lot. You'd probably be surprised to learn that this site, Backyard Chickens, receives over 1 million unique website visitors each month. Every month. There are that many people interested in learning about how to raise backyard chickens. And this website community is incredibly popular. It's built around a forum. So the forum on Backyard Chickens is really active. The members kind of drive the forum. They ask and answer each other's questions. And this site actually doesn't sell anything other than some branded T-shirts. But the revenue generated from this site comes from advertising. So when you can build up a high-traffic website like this, you can place advertisements on your site, Google Ads, and there's lots of other ad networks, and generate income just because people are viewing your website. Now, my friend Rob supports his family of 4 100% off of the revenue generated from backyardchickens.com. And they take a lot of vacations. So I can tell you that it's been incredibly lucrative, that if you're getting 1 million website visitors a month, you're doing really, really well. The other community I want to share with you is owned by a guy named Lee Dumas. He spoke at our conference, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but Lee Dumas runs a really popular podcast called Entrepreneur on Fire. He interviews entrepreneurs 7 days a week, and the podcast just really took off. People loved it. And what happened with John is what happens with a lot of us when you start building an audience. People were coming to him saying, teach me how to do what you're doing. Teach me how to run a podcast. And so he started a community called Podcasters Paradise. It's a membership community, and it is $99 a month, and you get training videos, and you get an online forum where you can talk with other people who are podcasting. So $99 a month for that. So between the community and the advertisers that are advertising on John's really popular podcast, you might be surprised to learn that he is generating over $400,000 per month off of these two things, the podcast advertisers and his community. He publishes his revenues on his blog each month, and so last month he earned over $400,000. I find this so fascinating, just incredible what the power of building your tribe can do. And along the lines of community, the last community model I wanted to share with you is trade association. Obviously, I started the Nonfiction Authors Association 4 years ago. I saw a need. It didn't exist. I was shocked that the domain Nonfiction Authors Association was available. I was shocked that Nonfiction Writers Conference was available when I purchased that. These are domains I bought for $20. And so, is there a missing community for what it is that you offer? I know an author, Marcia Layton Turner. She started an association for ghostwriters. That was much needed. One did not exist, and she's helping not only to educate ghostwriters, but to connect them with people looking to hire ghostwriters. And so, think about the type of community that you could build and how you want to shape that. There's also local communities. So I've long been a fan of Meetup.com. Meetup is a social site where you can organize in-person events. With the Nonfiction Authors Association, we use it to organize local chapters across the country. And a number of years ago, I used Meetup to organize a group for speakers. It was called the Sacramento Speakers Network. My sole motivation was that I wanted to know other speakers in my area. I thought we could learn from each other. So I launched this group with 4 people in a Starbucks. Gosh, I think it was maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And 4 people at the Starbucks turned into 8 people at a yogurt shop the following month. And then the month after that, we had 12. And over time, that group just continued to grow to the point where we became the largest business-based meetup in Sacramento. We had as many as over 100 people attending our meetings. And honestly, it was mind-blowing. I never even envisioned such a thing could happen from that. And the benefits that I saw from that were that I also got to meet many influential people in my own community because I was inviting them to come speak at our meetings, right? So I got to know local media people who spoke at our meetings, other, really popular speakers came and spoke to our meetings. So it was incredibly fun. People in my own community got to know me because I organized this group that had a lot of word of mouth. So, don't overlook what's happening in your own backyard and consider ways that you can connect and build your tribe there, in addition to what you can do online. And lastly, I want to talk about corporate sponsors. I view this as kind of the holy grail of authorship, and when you become an influencer or an authority, by the way the word authority begins with the word author, corporations want to work with you, and they want to work with you because they don't know how to speak to their audiences. They need to work with influencers to help them reach their target audiences. So I worked with a number of corporations, particularly when I was working with the small business audience. I've since shifted that to working primarily with authors. But when I was in the small business space, I had a ton of sponsorships. I had a credit card company paid me $1,000 a month to sponsor a blog post on my website. And the deal was that they would give me kind of a loose topic to write about, which is always something I would have written about anyway. And at the end of the blog, I would include a paragraph about how this company had sponsored the post, and here's where you can learn more about them. And I would tweet it and post it on social media, and they paid me $1,000 a month to do that. That went on for years. I've been paid for Twitter chats, webinars, blogging on their sites, blogging on my own sites. I had a six-figure corporate spokesperson role. Yes, these companies hire us, bloggers and authors, as spokespeople, just like the celebrities and the athletes get paid as spokespeople. We don't make those multi-million-dollar contracts that the old uber-famous people do, but you can definitely earn great money from corporations if you have a tribe that they want to reach. So that kind of wraps up our conversation about revenue streams. I would love to take your questions. Please dial *2. And before I get into questions, I want to add a couple of notes that I really want you to take away from this talk and from this conference. There's so much power in building your tribe, and I have 4 ways that I want to really drive home for you. Number 1 is blogging. You've heard it from a number of our speakers at this conference. I truly believe every author needs a blog. It brings traffic to your website. It's the heart of your social media strategy. It is a way for you to demonstrate your expertise, to help your audience, to serve your audience. What we should be doing is serving our audience. Number 2 is video. Video is a great way to influence an audience, to build a brand. There are people making $1 million a year giving makeup tutorials on YouTube, and video game players making $1 million a year on video games. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So if video is a medium you're comfortable with and you can figure out a way to entertain or educate, those are the 2 keys, by the way, in all of this. Educate and entertain. When you can figure out how to do both at the same time, that's golden. But if video is a comfortable medium for you, that is definitely something to look into. Social media, we all need to be using it. You do not need to master all networks. Pick 2 and do those really well. And lastly, podcasting. I can't say enough about the opportunities in podcasting right now. Podcasting is where blogging was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, there were thousands of blogs. Today, there are millions. Right now, there are thousands of podcasts. In 10 years, there will be millions. There are over 200 car models that now have Apple's CarPlay app in the dashboard, which means that the podcast app is built into the dashboard. What do you think that's going to do to traditional radio? It's going to completely change that form of media. So there's a huge opportunity in podcasting to start your own program as well as to be a guest on other people's programs. So blogging, video, social media, and podcasting are some of my favorite ways to build your audience. You don't need to do all of them, but you need to pick at least 3. Pick 3 of those and go for it and build your audience. All right, I'm going to take some questions. You can dial *2 if you have a question for me. Area code 703, you're on the line.
Yes, hi. I was wondering about any sort of paywall that you set up with your Vimeo account when you host a webinar and do it yourself.
Yeah, so basically when you are selling any kind of digital products, you need a shopping cart service system that can deliver download links and things like that. I personally use ejunkie.com, EJUNKIE.com. Terrible name, really great shopping cart service. It works well. You can deliver digital download links that expire so that that link doesn't get shared for all eternity. PayPal is great for a quick physical product, but it won't handle digital products because you can't send a link that expires. So there's eJunkie. There is oneshoppingcart.com. Infusionsoft is a really kind of a higher-end shopping cart solution. And Payloads is another one, Payloadz. Those are some of the best shopping cart solutions to look for.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for your question. Next question, area code 262. You're on the line.
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks so much for everything. I was wondering, early in your talk, you were talking about partnering with an online consulting firm, and I think you said Genie Test, something like that. Could you tell more about that?
Oh, yeah, that's Genie Cast. Genie, C-A-S-T, geniecast.com. It's a video-based consulting platform. And the other one was Clarity.fm, which, by the way, is part owned by Mark Cuban, which is interesting.
Oh,
all right,
okay.
thanks.
Genie Cast. Okay,
Genie Cast. You're welcome. Area code 248. You're on the line.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I don't really have a question. I just thought that this was the appropriate time to share that this is my first time attending this conference, and my mind is blown. I'm inspired, and I know this is going to help me take my business and my writing to the next level. So really just a thank you to you for being so brave and stepping out and creating all of this for such a great value and just creating this space. So I just wanted to share how valuable I think it is and how much I'm enjoying it.
That means so much to me. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate that. And it really does matter to me that you all get a lot of value. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, and let's see. Next caller, area code 540. You're on the line.
Hi, I think that's me. I'm in 703, but 540, I'll jump on it. Stephanie, I've been published for 4 months, my first book. I'm new to this. I joined NAA about a week ago, so I'm really, really new to you. The social media thing, old dog, new tricks. I get the idea that one must blog. Quite honestly, I was hoping that the nonfiction people wouldn't have to do that, but I'm convinced that was not a good hope. How do you initially attract people to your website? I mean, I've got a website. I think it's really, really good. It's professional. It's crammed packed with information. I've been reading as much as I could and making it as robust as possible. How do you get the initial people to come?
That's where the social media comes in. So when you are blogging, every blog post should get shared with your social media platforms. So, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you're using. Mm-hmm. And then your social media followers then click back into your website and they see your blog. So blog titles are incredibly important. You want to make sure that your titles are captivating and make people want to click, because I think the title is almost more important than the content itself. That's what really drives the traffic back. And the other thing is that Google helps bring you traffic when you're blogging, because the more content you produce, the more chances you give Google to find your website. Mm-hmm. Right, and I love to give the example of years back, one of my clients had said, I wish you'd write a blog post on how to autograph books. And I thought, well, that's kind of easy, right? You get a pen and you sign a book. And then I got to thinking about it and thought, well, I've actually had some difficult times with that where someone asked me to sign their book and I only had like a cheap stick pen with me. And if you've got a line of people, you kind of want to know your salutation. And so I ended up writing a blog post about how to autograph books. And darn if that blog post, which I wrote like 5 years ago, still isn't the most popular blog post on our website. Because whenever people type in how to autograph books in Google, they find that post, it brings them into our site. And so that is the ultimate goal, right? You want people to find your content, come into your site, and then your site has to be really great and show them immediately who you are, what you do, what your book is. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So I'll just kind of figure out how to start blogging. I got the message. Yeah. I just have to figure out how to do it now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else's turn. This is great.
Thank you. All right, area code 262. You're on the line.
Yes, thank you very much, Stephanie. My name is Brenda Lang. Now, will you explain the difference between coaching and consulting?
Yeah, I always kind of struggle with that too. To me, consulting is more of a teaching role, right? You're giving your client your expertise, and coaching or coaches like to feel like they're pulling that greatness out of their client. So if you think about how a coach works with an athlete, the coach is helping that athlete find their greatest performance. So to me, that's kind of the difference. The coach is helping somebody reach inside of themselves, where a consultant is kind of teaching tactical strategies. I view myself as a consultant. I teach tactical strategies where, life coaches, for example, get in and work with people to figure out how they have, the solutions inside of themselves. Does that make sense?
Sort of. I'll keep working on it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Area code 603. You're on the line.
Hi there, it's Charlene Ignites. I have a question about monetizing the social media presence. So for someone who has a blog and a sizable social media following, like logistically, how do you monetize that? Where do you, who do you contact? Where do you start?
Well, I mean, the corporations, corporate sponsors are a place to start. Corporations absolutely sponsor tweets. In fact, you can go to sponsoredtweets.com and sign up there for free to make yourself available as an influencer who gets paid to send out promotional tweets. And by the way, when you do stuff like that, when you promote another company on social media, you have to indicate that it is an ad or it's a sponsored post according to FTC guidelines. There's some lawsuits happening right now over that whole Fire Festival disaster that they paid all these influencers like Kim Kardashian to tweet about this big music festival in the Bahamas, and it wasn't disclosed that it was an ad, and so there are some big lawsuits happening. But sponsored posts are a way to go. Find the companies that want to reach your target audience. So if you're talking about women's health, you might go after a company like Dove that, its target audience is women. And the way I love to find sponsorship contacts is to go onto LinkedIn and look for the VP and the directors of marketing at the companies you want to target. So usually those two, the VP and the director of marketing, who make the decisions to hire the influencers. Does that help?
Yep, that's great feedback. Thank you.
You're welcome. Got time for one more. Area code, this is the Person and Witness Protection Program that has no identifying information. You're on the line.
Hi there. Sorry, it's a 408 area code, and it's Beverly. Thank you. This is a question about the website. Somebody mentioned GoDaddy as a place to get domain name, but can you purchase a domain name separately, and then how do you find a hosting package? I mean, what's a good website developer resource is the question.
So yes, you can definitely purchase domains from GoDaddy. They are great for domains. They also offer hosting. They're not my favorite choice for website hosting. And I'll tell you why. They're a very cheap solution, which means that a lot of the spammers host with them. And when you share a host server with a company that gets into trouble, that can put your website in danger. And, for some of you who've been around with the Nonfiction Authors Association, we have a private hosted server, and we've still had issues with website attacks and spamming. So I personally host with Servint, SERVINT.com. They've been a great host provider. We were previously with HostGator, and we had all kinds of problems with HostGator. I think when these companies get really big, kind of like the cable companies and the phone companies, they kind of lose their focus on customer service. And my experience with Servint is that they are very responsive. They take care of issues right away, and they take responsibility for problems. So I've been really, really happy with them.
Good. So you would purchase the domain name separately and then take it to Servint?
That's correct. And then you take it to your hosting provider. And your website designer should help you set that all up. If a good website designer can help you do that. But you can also just contact customer service at Servint, and they'll tell you exactly how to point your domain to your host. It's
so
really
where do
easy.
you
It's
find
just a couple of
website designers?
Oh, website designers. I love Upwork.com, UPWORK.com. And you want to look for a good WordPress designer. Upwork has freelancers from all around the world. And you can honestly get a website designed for under $500 today. Look at the user reviews for any freelancers you hire. I've had great success working with people through Upwork. I'm a huge fan.